Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games, back with another cool pinball repair video for you. Listen to that hum. We are working on a Williams F-14 Tomcat pinball machine that a customer brought us that's in pretty rough shape, but we're going through it and we're getting it in much nicer shape. So if you didn't see the first video, we went over kind of the as-found condition of it, which is pretty rough. And then we did another video where we worked on the power supply back here. So we've got it mounted back in, did a lot of replacing the capacitors, worked on the high voltage a little bit. We are now on to the main PCB, which has problems. So it has the dreaded battery leakage that we're going to have to mess with and try to fix, and it's going to be a lot of work, but we'll get on it. Now, I want you to notice that our main problem is well, not our main problem, but our main problem with the part we're talking about right now is that the displays are not right. So the top two displays don't even work. The bottom ones are missing segments, or digits, I mean. I can't really do a display test because I don't have everything up and running yet. I mean, this thing is, we're limping through it, people. But we do know that the power supply is good. So we've got problems with the displays, but I believe it's because of the battery damage on the PCB. So this is about a $300 or $400 board. We're going to have to save it for this guy. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically we're ready to pop it out and put it on the board and start working on it, and we can get a better idea of how extensive the battery damage is. So I'm going to turn it off, unplug all of these plugs, remove the screws, and we'll throw it on the bench and see what kind of condition we're starting with. Alright folks, so here we are. I think we can save it, but this board, we almost lost this board. If this thing would have went another year or two, may have been no saving this board. The thing with these is you can fix corrosion and battery damage and all of that. By the way, it's alkaline, not acid. But you can fix the repair, and we've done it a lot on like Bally PCBs, the older Ballys. But the deal with those they're much simpler boards, so it's all kind of isolated to one area on a Bally board, and that the battery was at the bottom of the board, so it works its way up a little bit. On this one, unfortunately, the batteries are at the top of the board, which means the corrosion drips down. And this board is much more complex. They basically made one big board that did everything. So these are your lamps. I can't remember where the switches are. I think maybe the switches are up here. I had a customer come in. Okay, but while the customer was perusing the store, guess what I did? I looked up where the switches are. So these are the lamps. These are the special solenoids. So that's your two kickers, your pop bumpers, and usually one or two more. The switches are actually down here. These are the solenoids. This is the sound board, and this is basically the CPU that runs everything. And the displays are up here. So I'm going to show you a horror movie. Okay? If you haven't watched The Ring lately, or The Saw, or the old Frankenstein or Dracula movies, you're about to see a horror film. Okay? So they mounted the batteries on the board, and then at some point they've leaked. It's not these particular ones, it's the ones that were in there before. Look at that. Look at that. The crap's not even connected anymore. So it's not those particular batteries. Somebody has attempted to put batteries back in it that didn't fix it. That was not your problem. Let me see if I can brighten it up where you can see it a little better, if my focus will cooperate here. Okay, so to the left of the battery, you have all this. you're starting to eat away here. I believe these PIAs control the displays, which connect through here. So we've got those problems on the displays. I mean, this very well could be it. And then look, all of the traces run under the battery connector. You can imagine what it looks like under there. But it didn't stop there. It kept dripping. See all the green on the chips? And it came down here. Look at that. Think that's still working right? Now you saw the game is up and running. And then down here to the switches, or these are probably for the lamps actually. Look at that. So about half of our lamps don't work. I wonder how much of it has to do with that. So yeah, so we got our work cut out for us on this one. Major damage from the batteries, unfortunately. So how do you fix a big problem like that? Well, one bite at a time, right? But you can see how it's much worse than the Bally's, because the Bally's, while they also do solenoids, lamps, blah, 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 it's signals that they send to other boards, so the board just has less going on it. And since the battery's at the bottom, it mainly messes up the reset section of the board. On this one, I think this is the reset section, and then it messes up the displays. It came down and messed up the switches. We got problems. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the old battery holder off. We're getting rid of the batteries. There's a modern way to do it. Oh, and by the way, I'm not the type that criticizes Williams for putting batteries on the board. It's just one of those things. I've got this old flashlight here. It's got batteries in it, right? Well, if you leave the batteries in there for 20 years, they're going to eat up and make the flashlight not work anymore. You know, somebody left the batteries on the board for 15 years and they leaked all over the board. It wasn't a design problem. It was a neglect problem. So it is what it is. So I don't really blame them for putting the batteries on it. It's a shame that a lot of these games, if they've been sitting with batteries installed, the batteries have ate things up. This is a similar problem with toys and things. You know, a lot of vintage electronics. If they're left with batteries in the battery compartment, everything's ate up. I've had a bunch of Game Boys around here with the battery compartments all ate up, but I put them all up. So I don't feel that it's a design flaw. A lot of people say, "Oh, it was so stupid they did that." I don't think it was stupid. I think it was what was expected at the time. But we got to take that out. I'm going to put a socket. I think it's this RAM. We're going to put an NVRAM, non-volatile RAM chip in it, so that it doesn't need a battery. So we'll get to that later. But the first thing we got to do is clean this thing up. Now, if you have all this corrosion, the problem is that it keeps going. It doesn't stop. If I remove those batteries, it will continue to spread and eventually get to the point where everything it touches doesn't work right anymore. Another thing, you need to understand that the chips are not just a big piece of black plastic. All of those little legs connect to something inside, you know. And so if the alkaline damage has crept up into the leg, it can actually creep inside the chip and screw up things inside the chip. So it's not just a cosmetic thing, and it's not just the traces on the board that get damaged. It's like inside the chips gets damaged too. So sometimes you can save it if it's not too bad and clean it up and just reuse it. Sometimes you have to replace everything. So we'll see how bad this one gets on us. But the first thing I'm going to do is pop that off, and I'm going to desolder the connections, and we won't have to put them back on, and just see how bad the trace damage is underneath that. So here's the back, and basically we need to unsolder these things to get the battery thing out. But if you look, there is a lot of corrosion even on the solder side. So the problem is, if you try to heat that up with a soldering iron, it's not going to come off like solder is supposed to. And you'll end up just burning the trace up, right? So you need to clean some of that corrosion off before you try to heat it up. So I'm going to have to use a fiberglass brush to clean it up a little bit. I had a viewer, I'm sorry. I had a viewer actually send me this a while back. Very cool. and it's a little fiberglass pencil, basically. That's fiberglass. So you got to be careful with it because the stuff makes a big mess. But basically, it's really good at scraping the corrosion off of the board. Because it's not quite strong enough that it will scratch holes in the board, but it will get all of the gunk off of there, right? So I'm going to very carefully go around and try to clean up a bunch of this so that I can get where I can actually get solder to work on it again. Okay, so I went over it with the fiberglass pencil as much as I could, and got it as much of the oxidation, discoloration. I guess it's not oxidation; it's alkaline damage is what it is. The corrosion. I got as much of it off as I could with the pen, and then I took a little bit of light sandpaper to a few spots. What you're trying to do is get the pins nice and shiny, so solder will stick to that. So to remove them, you need to put more solder on it to get everything to flow and where it'll come apart, right? See, this one up here is discolored. Solder will not stick to that as well. So basically, this whole section right here was that reset section we were talking about beside the batteries. So I took it out and then started taking all those off because, I mean, just look at the condition they're in. They're all corroded. So here's with the battery pack removed. It doesn't look that bad. I don't see any like crazy damage that we couldn't see outside of it. Like, so under it wasn't that bad. But all this was really screwed up. So I pulled all those out. So I'll show you one of the methods I use. People have asked if you can like bead blast it. Yeah, that would probably be the best way to do it if you have some ability to do something like that. So all these chips will probably have to be pulled. Just because they have so much freaking damage on them, right? Oh, by the way, when I was taking the reset stuff out, there were 4 or 5 resistors that had already broken in half, so I don't even know how the thing was starting. But anyway, so one of the ways that you can do it is you're going to have trouble getting solder to stick to it when it's discolored like that. So one of the things you can do is you can take a file or something and kind of, you don't want to get on the board really, because if you scratch through a trace, it's just more work you have to do. But you can kind of like clean stuff off the side of the pins. You're just trying to get it where you can get some solder to stick to it, right? And then do something like I did here. Just take solder and kind of glop it on as much as you can get on the pins. Okay? What you're trying to do is get the solder to stick to anything that it will stick to, and then it'll kind of spread into the corroded area as well, you know. And then try to pull while you're heating up the solder, try to pull the piece out from the other side. Now on this chip here, it was one of the worst damaged ones. I just a few seconds ago cut the chip off. So instead of trying to like, this one's horrible. I mean, it's got to go. So instead of trying to lift that all out at one time, and you've got traces here that are compromised anyways from all the corrosion, just take some side cutters and cut the damn thing off. Now, you might say, oh my God, this guy, he's telling us to sand the board. He's telling us to cut the chips off. Oh, this guy's crazy. People, it's already highly damaged. I mean, this thing is really screwed up. So if you want to save something this far gone, you got to get aggressive with it. So yeah, I'm going to cut freaking chips off of it. I'm going to sand the traces. This chip's already ruined, you know. So I mean, we're not going to use this chip. It's trash. Much more important than saving this chip is saving the damn board, right? So if this saves us from lifting one trace, then it's a good thing. I'll bet they make some of these that are just for this. I can usually get in there good enough to cut it out. And just take your time, go through it, get all the legs off, get the whole freaking chip out. Okay, so once you get the chip cut off, then what do? Well, if you can get enough solder on the back side, you can, with a pair of pliers, I just use my bare hands, but it burns a little bit. You can pull the little pieces out. So like if I heat up one leg, I can pull that leg out while I'm still heating it from the other side with the solder. And then once the leg is out of the way, you've got solder that basically has reflowed and that the corroded leg is gone. So usually you can use a solder sucker or whatever to remove the solder from the holes. Now, since I've done that on this part, once I get everything off that I want to get off, I'm actually going to sand that to get it nice and shiny again. Just trying to get rid of all of the damage. Right? Don't worry about your silk screen. Hell, it's screwed anyway. It's all going to come off because of the corrosion. Right? So this is the kind of crap that you end up spending hours doing. But you see how we're getting shiny copper again. Okay? You want to get all the corrosion gone. You want to get down to shiny copper. And then you can start reinstalling parts. Now, after you get the corrosion off, what I do is I take a toothbrush and I brush vinegar on it. Because vinegar is an acid and the batteries are alkaline. It's a base. So you put a little vinegar on it, it kind of neutralizes it. But you can basically get everything off of the surface, but do we really have everything off the surface, or is it just we can't see, So you brush a little vinegar on it, which kind of neutralizes it, and then you rinse the vinegar off, because if you leave the vinegar on, it'll do the same thing. It's an acid. It'll just do it the other way. So, it's chemistry crap. You're trying to get the pH to 0, I guess. Is that how it works? The reason I do the vinegar thing is just an old school way that people have done it for a long time. Everything I ever learned on these, I learned from Clay at pinrepair.com. He has these really great repair guides up, and that's where we learned how to do all this. So he always put vinegar on them. I've heard people say, "Oh, don't do vinegar. You're making it go back the other way." You got to do something, because there is alkaline trapped in places, like if it's under the solder mask and you can't see it, maybe the vinegar gets to it and neutralizes it. You're basically playing a game where you're trying to get it to not come back. You can take all of this off, and if there's still the traces of the alkaline in the traces or under the solder mask and everything, it'll start spreading again. It's like a cancer, basically. So we're trying to clean it up just the best we can, neutralize it if we can, get it nice and clean again, and then put new components back, and that will fix the board. Long term, is it going to be a problem again? It may be down the road. We've sold a bunch of Bally machines that I've done this on, and we've rarely had anybody where the board acts up on them after a while. So it could be. I don't. We've been selling for 10, 15 years like that. So I don't know how long term it's going to work, but it's a situation where you can buy a new board, but this board is like $400 or more, because it's very complex. It's got a lot going on. So I'm trying to save the guy. I don't mind working on it. I get a cool video out of it, and you guys probably enjoy seeing if we can get it to work again. So I don't mind. Doing the work and hopefully saving the board. So. But in your situation, it may be better to just bite the bullet and pay the $400 or $500 for the board. To me, I own several real estate properties. I'm doing pretty decent in life. But to me, $400 is still a lot of damn money. I don't go spend $400 if I can help it. So we're gonna try to fix it. All of these components that I took off, just if you're new to this and you don't do much of this, all of this stuff is super cheap. That's like $3 worth of parts right there. So you can repopulate all of this for a couple bucks. And for us, we use parts like that all the time. So like all of these resistors I already own. Like this entire case is full of resistors. So I've got most of the parts that go on here. And all of those, since I've got so many I bought in bulk, I paid like a couple pennies a piece for them. So this is literally no money. This chip I cut out here is a 7408. That's a 20-cent IC chip. You know, so there's not much money involved. It's just the time and the effort and listening to me explain about it for another hour. So I'm going to get back to cutting more stuff out. Where's my side cut clippers? All right, so we are getting some more of it out. Oh boy. So there were resistor packs up here that had the corrosion. Took them out. This resistor pack was able to be cleaned up. All of this reset stuff had to go. The battery thing had to go. 3 PIA chips I had to cut out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ICs besides that. 2 more resistor packs. And then for whatever reason, these transistors, I don't know if the battery juice leaked down or what, but what a mess. So I've been working on it about 3 hours total so far. So if you plan on doing this with yours, this one is deceptively bad. Like it was actually still running. You saw that. But whenever you get close to it, everything's got damage. So even like this, see how this chip, it doesn't look, you know, it's not, see how it's just discolored a little bit. It's not as bright and shiny as that. So I'm going to try to hit it with some vinegar and clean it up a little bit. And then also these capacitors all look pretty good, but the legs don't look great. So I might have to remove those too. But basically, we've got everything off of it that we need off to do the treatment. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm actually, and another thing. I actually cleaned it up decent with this wire brush. Now this is not it's pretty stiff, but it's just a little cheap wire brush. And you might think, oh my God, you're going to destroy the board doing that. The point is the board is already destroyed. We're trying to save the board. So that's not going to do any more damage than that alkaline did. So I'll show you a little bit. For instance, see this is how this is discolored. So that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Okay. Now if I can really get on this. You see, I didn't really destroy anything. So, I mean, you can go crazy on this thing with a wire brush. And all it's really going to do is get off loose surface. I'll just continue to call it corrosion. It's from alkaline and it corroded it. Whenever you say corrosion, people think acid, but it's not acid. So you can see these actually cleaned up pretty good. All right. So the way to get them off is you have to get solder to stick to the pin so that the solder can flow around the pin, heat up the pin, and allow it to be removed from the hole. So that's the secret to the whole thing. You have to get solder to flow to the pin. So you have to clean the pin until solder will stick to it. If it's all dull looking, if it's not shiny looking, solder is not going to stick to it. And you can't fix that by just making your iron more hot, because you'll just burn a hole in the board. you can literally, with a hot iron, you can just literally push a hole through the board. So you don't want you don't want to turn your iron up more hot to try to get the solder to melt to the pin better. It won't work. All you need to do is get the pin shiny, and then solder will stick to it. So you got to get it shiny with a wire brush, or with a file, or with sandpaper, or something. If you get that pin shiny, solder will stick to it. You know, the issue though is you don't want to sand or scrape through the traces on the board. You know, you have all these fine traces. Now, this still looks horrible, but we haven't treated it or anything yet. Okay, so all we're doing right now is just getting old, corroded crap off of the board. Usually, you won't have one this bad. Usually, if it's this, you'll get a couple of these that maybe need replaced, and maybe this PIA. This is pretty rough because it just slowly spread on everything. Okay, so I'm going to keep cleaning it. I'm going to try to get solder to flow into each one of the vias, and then remove the solder from the via. So basically, there is metal that connects the top to the bottom through each one of those holes. That metal can all have corrosion in it. You got to try to get it out, right? So same thing. We're going to try to get solder to flow through it and then remove the solder. We're going to try to get every one of these holes free of solder. I already did most of these. So it's just a ton of work, takes a ton of time. But like I said, the board's $400 or $500. Okay, so I'm gonna continue cleaning it, and I'll show you how it looks when we get farther along. Okay, folks, so we've been taking off more and more stuff. I even had to take off one of the connectors because it was corroded. So we are down to, I think I have removed everything from the board that I want to remove. So here's what we're starting with. I'll give you a close-up of the nastiness. There are a few chips still that have slightly, just minor discoloration on the legs, but I have to stop somewhere. Okay. So as you can see, it's pretty much destroyed. Now, if you're doing this to yours and you're watching this as like a how-to, the way I do it is I get everything off that we need to take off, and then what I'm going to do now is just sand the hell out of it and try to get it down to where some of the copper traces are exposed. We're just trying to get as much of the corrosion off of it as we can. And plus, once you get the traces exposed, you can do things like, these are all pin holes that have solder in them. So if I sand that to get it nice and shiny again, I can add new solder to the hole and then suck out the old solder so that you got nice clean holes everywhere. Some of that already happened, but you know, some of it hasn't. So it's just very time consuming. I've probably spent 3 hours on this one so far. But putting the stuff back in is a lot quicker. The main thing is getting all the old stuff off and trying to clean it up as good as you can. So I'm going to get on it with some sandpaper, very light. This stuff is 320 grit is what I'm using right now. I might go a little heavier than that just to get some more of the corrosion off and the solder mask off. But with the stuff off of it, you've got a nice flat surface that you can actually literally sand on. So we'll see how it looks after that. So this is what we came up with. I sanded the crap out of it. Anywhere there was any kind of thing that looked like corrosion, I tried to sand it off. Okay. Same with the back. You don't have to expose all the traces, but if you do, you do. Now, some people have said that you should put a conformational coating on it. You go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do it, though. I've never done it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if you feel like you need to do that, Be my guest, and let Lions Arcade do the... Wait, I can't say that. If I say that, they're going to probably give me a copyright strike for ripping them off. You know the song. So now I'm going to take this toothbrush. What do you think? Has that ever seen a tooth? This isn't really a toothbrush anymore, is it? I'm going to take this toothbrush, and I'm going to use it to install vinegar. And you know this is vinegar because it says right on the bottle. Wouldn't it be more cool if you went to the store and when you bought stuff, it just had it written on the bottle like that? Doesn't that look like it's more like, you know, looks like it's more legit. Looks like something out of like a Frankenstein movie, you know, like bottles of chemicals and stuff, and there's lights and stuff going on in the background. Okay, so I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to brush vinegar on everything, including the chips near it that we're keeping. Now, why am I doing all that? It's because what leaked out of this is an alkaline, it's a base, vinegar is an acid. So the thought process is that there are pieces of the base stuck maybe under this leg here that I can't get to. Maybe it's under this pin here that I can't get to. Maybe it's right here on this resistor that I can't get to. Or it's those legs that I was saying were slightly discolored, like those right there, that are slightly discolored, right? So the thought process is you get vinegar on it, and hopefully that will neutralize it. And then you I rinse it off with water, right? Now you don't want to, you can put this whole thing in your dishwasher, but what I do is I just get a little water over the parts that I got vinegar on, basically. And then you let it thoroughly dry. Don't go pop it in the machine 20 minutes later. Let it thoroughly dry. Water will not harm these components. Turning it on while it has water on it will fry every one of these components, okay? So that's the thing. Just if you get it wet, that's not a problem. Just don't plug it in like that. So I'm gonna put vinegar on it, then I'm gonna rinse the vinegar off, and then we're going to start working on putting the stuff back in it. And it'll take quite a while to do that anyway, so we'll have to worry about it. It'll be dry by the time we get ready to test it. So let me brush some vinegar on it, and then I'll rinse it off, and we'll see what we finish up with as far as before we can start repopulating things. Okay, folks. Now, just in case you thought I was kidding, you see the water on it? I literally just rinsed this thing off. So I'm going to take a paper towel and dry off as much of it as I can, but I'm not going to be able to get all of it, you know. Now, another thing you can do, and I've done a lot in the past, I just didn't choose to do it on this one, is you can pour after you get the water on it. Clean it off like this. Just try to dry it off. I mean, there's the water. Right? Just try to dry it off the best you can. And then pour rubbing alcohol on it. Right? Rubbing alcohol absorbs water. So the theory behind that is the rubbing alcohol will get... So water just got under this chip, likely, right? So we have to wait a day or two for the water to all come out of this chip. So it evaporates, right? So I'm trying to get as much of the excess up as I can. If I were to pour rubbing alcohol on it, the rubbing alcohol evaporates really quick and it absorbs water. So it would speed up the process of the water evaporating. But if you do that, the rubbing alcohol, it stains the board. So it will turn the green parts of the board kind of like a white. If you watch a lot of our other videos, you can see that. I do it a lot of times. It just depends on the board. This one's got so much stuff on it. I don't know. I just don't want to. And I know it's going to take me a while to replace everything. So I'm not too anxious about getting all the water off of it quickly, because I'm going to, it'll probably... I usually work on these an hour or two a day, so it'll probably be a couple days before I actually get everything back where I need to worry about whether or not it's dry. By then it will be dry. So I'm not doing the alcohol thing this time, but that is completely acceptable to do. If you want to do yours a different way, do yours a different way. You know what my hero Bob Ross said, right? Bob Ross said, "There are no mistakes, only happy little accidents." What a stud he was. So the back, you see, literally has water on it. Alright folks, I think that's going to do it for this one. I'm going to break it in half. This board is going to be taking everything off of it. We're to the point where the absolute next step is putting all the stuff back on it. So I'll do a separate video of that. So leave your comments below, let us know what you think. Tell us how you do it. Right? Hey, I'll tell you what. If you don't tell me I'm doing it wrong, I won't tell you you're saying to do it wrong. How's that? But feel free to leave your comments below. Let us know how you do it or what you think. Do you think this thing will ever run? You know, usually I don't upload videos until I am finished. So usually I would say that if this video has been uploaded, I must already have this game done, because that's how I usually do it, right? But lately I've been uploading some of our bloopers where we mess up or something's not right, or, you know, I spent a lot of time on that Freedom pinball machine troubleshooting something that I was completely wrong about the whole time. But I left it in the video and uploaded it. So what if I wasn't able to fix this board, and so I uploaded it anyway, though, just to show you that sometimes we don't fix them. I don't know. The jury's out. Will I repair it? You'll have to watch next video and see. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. We'd like to thank everybody that's been using our Amazon links. If you don't know about that, there is a link down below to Amazon, hopefully in your country, depending on where you are. If you click that link before you buy something on Amazon, it gives us a tip because we just sent you to Amazon. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. People have been buying all kinds of stuff. The other day, what did somebody buy? The other day it was a robot or something robotic. I can't remember. Something. They bought something really cool. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. And also, make sure to check out our brother channel, My Brother Donnie. So the name of my brother's channel on YouTube is My Brother Donnie. That's the actual name of the channel. And he does a lot of interesting stuff, but lately he and I, on his channel, have been working on an old building that we bought and that we are fixing up in a little small town, trying to help revitalize the downtown area of this little small town. So go check that out. And then finally, have you heard? We have a new section on our website. Look at that. My focus is tripping. We have a new section on our website devoted to parts. So some of the parts that we use, we have links to them up on there. And also our t-shirts and things like that. So if you're looking for any of our swag or our merchandise, go check it out on our website. But we will see you on the next video. Hope you've enjoyed it so far.